Today, I'd like to talk about anger, what it is, and what is the problem. To begin, I want to define it. I really like the definition by Dr. David Seaman's, author of Healing for Damaged Emotions. He defines anger this way. He says, anger is a divinely implanted emotion closely allied to our instinct for right. Anger is designed to be used for constructive spiritual purposes. The person who can't feel anger at evil is a person who lacks enthusiasm for good. Anger is one of the natural primary emotions whose role is survival and protection from wrongs in life. You've been wronged, and so you have a right to be angry. Remy Diedrich refers to anger as a God-given emotional response to injustice. It's an emotion that motivates and empowers you to defend what is good and right. Anger compels you to right wrongs. And I think far too often that people think there's something wrong with anger, or there's something wrong with them because they're angry. And there's nothing I would disagree with more. So I think until you can quit beating yourself up for being angry, if you're angry, which would be natural in the case of infidelity because there's been a horrible injustice. There's nothing wrong. In fact, there's something right with that anger. But anger is also only one letter away from danger. And when there's a perceived injustice, anger is the emotion that motivates us to right that wrong. But how does it motivate us? The benefit of anger, however, is going to be determined by whether or not the actions motivated by the anger are either constructive or destructive. Does it move us forward, or does it keep us stuck? So let me give you an example of what I would consider constructive anger. Years ago, there was an incident with one of my children where she was in a classroom and there was no adult supervision. The kids were cutting up. It was a study hall. She was trying to study. She actually got up to go get some adult supervision. A boy who was much larger than her blocked the door and wouldn't let her leave. And so my daughter kicked him to get by. Well, the response to her actions, ultimately she was going to be expelled because there's no physical violence in the school. And I felt that was a gross injustice because she was being restrained by a boy. As far as I was concerned, that was abusive. She could do whatever she needed. The school was, I felt wrong simply because they didn't have supervision in a classroom. And so I got really angry. And that anger served as a motivation for me to go to the school board. I was going to sit there and fight that thing all the way to the Supreme Court. So it was a huge motivator to right what I considered to be a wrong in that circumstance. Now, that anger could have also driven me to do some other things. I guess it could have been destructive. I could have picked a fight with that kid's father, or I could have gone and beat that kid up, because there was a part of me that wanted to retaliate and hurt him in the same way he tried to hurt my daughter. I guess I could have started slandering the school board. I could have done a lot of other things that could have been destructive. But in that situation, I chose to do something constructive. Aristotle says that anyone can become angry. That's easy. But to be angry at the right person, and to the right degree, and at the right time, and for the right purpose, and in the right way, he said, that's not easy. Because anger can also, like we said, be destructive and not constructive. So here are a few ways that I think anger becomes destructive. First, when anger goes into retaliation, it's not going to be constructive. I believe it's going to be destructive. Now, you may argue and say, I'm trying to right a wrong, but retaliation isn't about trying to right a wrong. It's about trying to set things right in a sense of maybe vengeance, but that's not the best part of us. Pain that's not transformed will be transmitted, according to Richard Rohr, and I agree with that. And I think that when we're trying to transmit our pain, rather than using our anger, I think in a way to express what's important to us, but not to hurt, then when we do that, we end up hurting a lot of other people. we do this at A Fair Recovery because we want you to have a better life. We believe that it's possible, after the devastation of infidelity, to have something even better than you had before. I mean, that's our goal. That's our hope for you. But retaliation doesn't help you get to that place of a better life, if that's why you're involved with us here. Anger is going to be a real problem when it's not managed. Ambrose Bierce says, "Speak when you're angry, and you'll make the best speech you'll ever regret." Ultimately, it's not about just letting it out there. When I go to the school board to speak to try to do something constructive, it's not to try to blow up the world and rain down fire from heaven. And being a screaming maniac wasn't going to ultimately get me what I wanted. I wanted something, an outcome that would be good. Anger becomes a real problem when it's stuck and it never passes on. Ultimately, we want our anger to flow through us and move on, but sometimes when there's been this level of trauma, this level of hurt, the anger stays there and you just become an angry person. And anger turned inward, when it's stuck, that is the definition of depression. Every minute you stay angry costs you a minute of peace. And if you're stuck in the anger, I just want to encourage you to consider that, I don't want to live here. I want you to be able to transcend that anger, to go on to something else. I mean, the anger won't undo the wrong that was done, but it can keep you stuck with the wrong that was done and not allow you to move on. Anger becomes a real problem when it's a secondary emotion. Anger can become a volume level for other emotions. For instance, it's much easier to show someone your anger than it is to let them know you're hurt. And frequently, behind anger, if you're stuck in your anger, it's become a protection mechanism. And it's a volume level for your hurt or your guilt or your fear or your trauma. And when the anger is a protector, it isolates you from other people. It keeps you from being able to connect again. Anger keeps you from love. And if that's the case, you may need to do some individual work to figure out, how do I heal enough where that emotion can finally let go instead of it, capturing me and hanging on to me? Now, I think there are some myths about anger. That anger management is about learning how to suppress your anger. And it's not. Anger management is learning how to keep the level of anger, or the expression of anger, constructive, not destructive. I think some people think that I can't help it. It's something you can't control. And I know that's not true because I've worked with too many people who have learned to manage it, who finally accepted that their anger is out of control and they better learn to control it because it's taking life from them. It's robbing them. I think it's a myth when people think that I shouldn't hold on to my anger, that somehow it's healthy just to let it out. And I think at times there may be some benefit in externally maybe breaking plates or something like that. But anger begets anger. And it's really learning to move beyond the anger and seeing that there's really no benefit, that it's no longer serving a purpose for you. Some people believe that anger, aggression, intimidation are going to help you earn the respect you deserve, to help you get what you want. But it won't. Ultimately, it's going to destroy what was precious to you. The truth is that unmanaged anger will keep you from the life you want, not help you get the life you want. You have every right to be angry because there's been an injustice. But the question you need to ask yourself is whether that anger has now become its own problem. If so, I'd recommend read Stuck. From the Christian perspective, if that's where you come from, I'd read Stuck by Remy Diedrich. Great book, and it does a great job of addressing anger. Overcoming Emotions That Destroy, Chip Ingram. That's another good book. If you come from more of a secular perspective, The Anger Management Workbook for Men by Aaron Carmen. is a great book. And there's also an anger management workbook for women by Julie Catalano. And you can find any of those books on Amazon. So be honest with yourself. Again, you had a right to be angry. But has the anger become a problem? And if so, please do yourself a favor. We want you to get the life that you're looking for. Get help. Be healing.